Oh my God. I'm not sure. I don't know, I've just come upstairs now, my wife's face down on the bed, so I'm going to flip her over now, but she never sleeps on her front, she's not moving at all. I'm calling her, Sian.
This is the story of Sian Hammond. At 12:20 a.m. on the morning of October 30th, 2023, a fitness tracker went silent. Sian Hammond had been wearing her Whoop device on her wrist, the kind of wearable that monitors heart rate, movement, and physical exertion in real time. For 20 minutes before 12:90, it had recorded what the data described as extreme physical exertion. Not exercise, not restless sleep, extreme exertion, the kind of output a body produces when it is fighting for its life. At 12:19 a.m., the signal stopped. Sometime after that, the tracker was removed from her wrist. The following morning, Robert James Hammond called emergency services. He told the operator he'd found his wife lying face down on the bed, completely still, unresponsive. He said she never slept on her stomach. He called her name into the room. He performed a devastated husband discovering an unthinkable tragedy, but the device on her wrist had already told the truth. She had been strangled. She had fought. The marks on her face, her hands, her arms proved it. And all of it happened in the bedroom of the home she had shared with her husband for nearly 30 years. 30 years of marriage, 30 years of trust, and a £450,000 life insurance policy that Robert Hammond had taken out on his wife because he had already decided, months before that night, that her death was worth more than her life. The question this story asks is not whether Robert Hammond killed Sian Hammond. A unanimous jury answered that. The question is how long he had been planning it, and how close he came to getting away with it. Before this becomes a story about debt and deception and a man's unraveling, it has to be a story about Sian. Because that is the part that gets lost in cases like this. The financial forensics, the browser searches, the wearable data, all of it matters to the truth of what happened. But underneath all of that evidence is a woman who got up on the morning of October 29th, 2023, and had no idea it would be her last day alive. 46 years old. She lived in Primes Corner, Histon, a quiet residential pocket of Cambridgeshire, where people know their neighbours' cars and children cycle to school without anyone worrying. She was warm by every account, intelligent, the sort of mother who didn't just support her daughter's ambition, she organised her entire life around them. Both girls were elite competitive swimmers, not club level, national level, one representing Wales, one representing England. That doesn't happen without a parent who shows up to every early morning, every long drive, every competition that everyone else in the family finds exhausting. That parent was Sian. The parent, the weekend she was killed, she'd been out for dinner with friends on Saturday evening, laughing, present, at ease. She had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. She went to sleep on the night of October 29th, next to the man she had loved since she was a teenager. She didn't know about the insurance policy. She didn't know the full depth of the debt. She didn't know that the man lying beside her had spent months researching how to kill her. Sian Hammond simply wanted to grow old with the man she had married. She had that right. She had earned it across 30 years. He had already decided to take it from her. Robert James Hammond was 47 years old, a building contractor, the kind of man who projects competence, who turns up when he says he will, who knows the language of business, who looks from the outside like someone who has built something real. He and Sian had been together since they were teenagers. By 2023, they had nearly 30 years of shared life, a family home in Histon, 2 daughters competing at national level. On the surface, a family that had done everything right. That surface was the only thing holding. By 2023, Robert's business debt had exceeded £300,000, over £119,000 owed to legal and general, approximately £80,000 in unpaid HMRC back taxes, VAT fraud on a property in Milton running quietly in the background, and, critically, Robert had signed a personal liability guarantee. There was no corporate structure between him and those debts, no limited company to absorb the collapse. If the business went under, so did everything else, the house, the life, all of it. He didn't tell Sian. Instead, he told creditors. He told them she had cancer, that they were divorcing, that she was seriously. These weren't panicked, off-the-cuff excuses. They were sustained, specific fabrications, deployed deliberately to buy weeks of patience from people chasing money he didn't have. He used her name, her health, her marriage, as props in stories built to protect himself. Sian had no idea she was being used. She was simply living her life, looking after her daughters, getting on with things, and at some point, with the debt climbing and the lies multiplying and the personal guarantee sitting like a loaded gun pointed at everything they'd built, Robert Hammond took out a £450,000 life insurance policy on his wife. He stopped thinking about how to solve the problem. He started thinking about how to end it. The browser search records recovered from Robert Hammond's devices tell you everything you need to know about a man moving from desperation into calculation. He searched for diazepam overdose, dosage, lethality, whether it would be detectable at autopsy. He searched for how to disconnect the passenger airbag in a Ford Focus, not the driver's airbag, the passenger's. He considered both. He rejected both. He had worked through a shortlist. That is the line the prosecution placed before the jury, and the one no defense argument could satisfactorily frame. Because a man who researches 3 separate methods across multiple weeks is not a man who snapped. He wasn't curious. He wasn't researching for work. He was auditing options the way a contractor audits a job, assessing each method, calculating risk, ruling things out. The diazepam carried forensic risk he couldn't control. The airbag, the same. What replaced them was something more direct, something that required him to be present, in the same room, with his hands on his wife's body. And by the time October 29th arrived, the decision had already been made. The weekend began the way weekends do. Saturday evening, Sian was out for dinner with friends. Easy, normal, nothing wrong. Sunday afternoon, the couple had a late lunch together. They exercised in their home gym. They watched television. The house at Prime's Corner was quiet, just the two of them. Robert had known the girls would be away. He had planned for this. What happened next? Forensic pathology established with clinical precision. Home Office pathologist Dr. Fitzpatrick Swallow confirmed the cause of death as manual strangulation, not a fall, not a medical event. Manual strangulation requires sustained physical force, applied deliberately, for long enough to cause death. Pathologists testified it takes at least a full minute of continuous pressure, often longer. It is 60 seconds or more of deliberate killing while the person beneath you fights for their life. Sian fought. The defensive injuries to her face, her hands, and her arms proved it. The blunt force trauma to the back of her head proved it. She clawed. She reached. She tried to tear his hands away. She fought with everything she had. On her wrist, through all of it, the Whoop tracker recording. At 12:19 a.m., it flatlined. Sometime after that, Robert removed the device from her wrist. He arranged her face down on the bed, and then he waited, through the rest of the night, through the early hours of the morning, before placing the 999 call. He told the operator she never slept on her stomach. He called her name into the room. The device he'd removed from her wrist had already told investigators everything they needed. Cambridgeshire Constabulary did not treat Sian Hammond's death as unexplained for long. Dr. Fitzpatrick Swallow's pathology report was unambiguous from the start. Manual strangulation, defensive injuries, blunt force trauma. This was a homicide. The question was never whether someone had killed Sian. It was whether the evidence would be sufficient to prove it, beyond reasonable doubt, in a courtroom. The CCTV review came early. Every camera covering Prime's Corner and the surrounding streets was checked. No unknown vehicle. No unfamiliar figures approaching the house. No evidence of any third party entering or leaving the property that night. Robert's account had nothing to support it, and considerable evidence to contradict it. T. Lern Robinson and D.C. Charlie Sermons began pulling at the financial thread. What they found wasn't just debt, it was motive, architecture, and documented intent. Over £300,000 in business liabilities, £119,000 to legal and general, £80,000 to HMRC, a personal liability guarantee, VAT fraud, and fabricated stories, cancer, divorce, a wife's serious illness, told to creditors to buy time that had long since expired. Then the browser history landed, the diazepam searches, the Ford Focus airbag disconnection, Tim's stamped cross-reference, not the searches of a grieving husband, and then the Whoop data. 20 minutes of extreme exertion, a flat line at 12:19. Forensic analysts confirmed the biometric record was consistent with the pathology findings in every thread they pulled revealed another thread beneath it. The picture didn't have gaps. It had one shape, and it pointed in one direction. On November 10, 2023, 12 days after Sian died, officers came for Robert Hammond. He didn't fight it, didn't run. He was arrested, processed, and charged. The jury had been deliberating for less than a day. When they filed back into the courtroom, not one of them looked at Robert James Hammond. People who have sat through trials know what that means. Jurors who have acquitted someone will sometimes glance at the defendant. Jurors who have found someone guilty almost never do. Robert Hammond stood and waited. The foreman rose. Guilty of murder. Unanimous. The prosecution had built its case on 4 interlocking pillars. The forensic evidence, manual strangulation, defensive wounds, blunt force trauma, that eliminated any possibility of natural death or accident. The whoop tracker, 20 minutes of extreme exertion, that placed a real-time physiological record of violence before the jury. The CCTV, no intruder, no third party, no alternative explanation. And the financial evidence, £300,000 of debt, a personal guarantee, 12 months of fabricated stories, and a £450,000 insurance policy on Sian's life that established not just motive, but a documented timeline of intent stretching back months. The defense argued the financial evidence was circumstantial. Debt, they said, doesn't prove murder. The browser searches made that argument untenable. The judge sentenced Robert Hammond to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 24 years. He noted that this was not a spontaneous act. It was a calculated endpoint, the conclusion of months of financial deception, during which Robert Hammond had treated his wife not as a human being, but as a liability to be eliminated. The trust Sian had placed in him across 30 years of marriage was not a mitigating factor. It was an aggravating. He had used that trust as the weapon. Robert Hammond, as he was led from the dock, turned toward his family in the public gallery and blew them kisses. Before sentencing, the court heard that Sian's own mother had written a letter to the judge requesting leniency for Robert Hammond. 30 years of watching her daughter love this man, 30 years of family dinners, shared holidays, grandchildren growing up. She couldn't bring herself to want the worst for him, the man who had strangled her daughter in the bedroom of her own home. That letter doesn't need commentary. It says everything about the devastation that radiates outward from a crime like that, not just the death itself, but the impossible positions it leaves the living in. Sian's daughters, the 2 elite swimmers she had driven to every gala, every early morning session, every competition that mattered, lost their mother 11 days before her 47th birthday. They lost her to a man who had ensured her life, exhausted every other option, and decided she was worth more to him, dead than alive. The £450,000 insurance policy was never paid. There is a broader question this case forces us to sit with. How many households in Britain are carrying the kind of financial pressure Robert Hammond was carrying? Quietly, invisibly, behind a front door that looks entirely ordinary from the outside. The debt, the guarantees, the unpaid taxes, the fabricated stories to keep the walls standing. None of that is unique to Robert Hammond. What is unique is the decision he made about what to do with it. Most people find another way. They face it. They lose everything and start again. They ask for help. Robert Hammond decided his wife's life was a financial instrument. Sian Hammond was 46 years old. She had done nothing wrong. She had no idea what was coming. And when it came, she fought back with everything she had. She deserved so much more than what she got on that quiet Sunday night in Histon. Some things don't need more words than that.